Namaste and welcome. It is Rishi here from meditatewithrishi.com, and today we are going to be exploring the most famous of all philosophies, the yoga philosophy. Okay, so of course, like the other philosophies, we'll be answering the questions: who am I, why do we suffer, and how to become free of suffering. But this is a really important and practical philosophy, okay? So for any seeker on the spiritual path, this is really important in case you have not come across it yet, okay? All right, so let's get into it. Now, yoga today, worldwide, it is known for its postures mostly, right? Yogic postures, pranayam, is bringing a lot of health, a lot of healing to a lot of people, which is great. But what a lot of people don't know is that yoga is actually a complete philosophy of life. What I mean by that is you can base your entire life, every decision that you make on this philosophy, and it will give you that ultimate happiness and to those around you as well, okay? So yoga, you can say, is the science of self-realization. From the different parts, it is the most comprehensive and scientific method to self-realization or God realization, however you want to phrase it, okay? Now, yoga obviously has been in existence across India for time immemorial, okay? So the sage who has given us the yoga philosophy is Patanjali. Maharishi Patanjali. Okay, so because yoga was existing for a very long time, we wouldn't say that Patanjali is the creator of the yogic science, because the written texts of yoga, they date back thousands of years. But yoga as an oral tradition, who knows how long it's been there for? It is said that Lord Shiva himself was the first yogi, and he is as old as time itself. So it's very old, right? So across India, yoga has existed in many different forms. So what the sage Patanjali has done, you can say he is more of a compiler of yoga, right? So one theory is that during Patanjali's time, there was so much scattered information, different practices, different schools of thought, all across India. And what was needed is a bit of standardization, to give a seeker on the path a very systematic, clear, step-by-step approach that if I want to realize my true self, if I want to attain freedom, liberation, how can I do it? Give me the step-by-step way. And this is what Patanjali has done, okay? At the same time, you can say, arguably, Patanjali is the greatest psychologist of all time, because never before has the mind, the human mind, been looked into so deeply. Not just looked into, but understood so deeply. And never before has the exact method of how to conquer the mind, how to transcend the mind and realize your divinity been explained so clearly. So the core aspect of the yoga philosophy is the text from Patanjali, which is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. It is a text of 196 sutras. So sutras, you can say, are like aphorisms. They are mini statements, right? But the mini statements are like formulas. Each statement, it encompasses an ocean of wisdom, essentially. So on these sutras, commentaries are written, right? So that we can understand, so that a layperson can understand these, essentially. So what we are going to do today is we are going to go through the essence of the yoga philosophy, answer the three questions of who we are, why we suffer, and how to become free of suffering, okay? So let's get into it. Now, a bit about the actual text, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So very cleverly, Patanjali has divided the text into 4 chapters, okay? So the first chapter is Samadhi Pada, which describes the road to Samadhi, the road to enlightenment. So this is almost like a motivation. He tells you what you can expect and motivates you to get on this path, essentially. The second one is sadhana pada, which means the chapter on practice. So here the practice of yoga is essentially expounded. Then you have the vibhuti pada, which is, easily a lot of people's favorites, because it talks about the yogic powers, the divine powers that manifest on the path of concentration, on the path of meditation, on the path of yoga. Okay, and last but not least is the kaivalya pada, which is the talking about liberation. Okay, so this is how the text goes. Now the text has got 196 sutras. What we are going to do is we are going to explore the first 3 sutras, which actually give us a clear answer already on our key questions, which is why do we suffer and how to become free of suffering, essentially. Okay, so let's get into that. So the first sutra is Atha Yoganushasanam. Okay, Atha Yoganushasanam, which means, Atha means now. So it is saying, and now the teachings on yoga are given. Now the teachings on yoga are given. So if Patanjali was really being conservative with the amount of words he's using, why would he put the word now, right? So one theory of this, which I really love, is that he is saying now the teachings of yoga are given, meaning now, once you have realized that all of the things that you thought would give you happiness do not contain that eternal happiness. So your money, your cars, your fame, your food, your sex, your drugs, your holidays, all the things that you until now thought will give you happiness, eternal happiness, do not have that. So now the teachings of yoga are given so that you can you can go and attain that happiness that you so desperately seek. Okay, so I thought I'd share that because I love that interpretation. Now the second one is probably the most important sutra, which is he defines what is yoga, and this also answers the question, why do we suffer? So yogas chitta vritti nirodha, yogas chitta vritti nirodha, which means yoga is to block the modifications of the mind. So you can say chitta in this context, to be simple, means mind. Vritti means modification. I'll explain this. And nirodha means to block, to stop, to cease completely. Okay? So he's saying that yoga is stopping the modifications of the mind. So what this means is, the example that is given is that our mind has a lot of clutter, a lot of modifications, a lot of thoughts that are happening, right? And this is keeping it away from its true nature. And that's why we suffer. That's why we feel agitation, anxiety, etc. So if you think of a lake that has ripples on its surface, you cannot actually see within, right? The water is not, you cannot see through the water. But a lake that is completely still, that has no ripples, you can see very clearly what lies within. And in our case, that lake represents the mind. And if the mind is completely still, it rests, we can see our true nature, which is pure bliss, essentially, okay? Now, that is one way to look at it. Let me give you some practical examples of what he means by this, okay? So the first example I'll give you is, let's say that you are walking on the road, okay? So you're walking on the road, and first thing you see is a cake shop, okay? You see the cake shop, you like what you see, you feel a bit happy, a bit excited, okay? Then you continue walking and you see a dog that is perhaps injured on the road, and that makes you sad. You feel a bit of suffering because you see this dog that's suffering. Then you continue walking and somebody gives you a compliment. They say, oh, wow, what a nice beard you have. And again, you feel happy, right? And then you continue walking and you see some homeless people that are begging for money, and you feel sad. You feel, why do they have to go through this? So this is an example of you walking through life. The mind is always being modified by the external inputs that are coming in, the external influences that you see. So the mind is never actually in its true state, in its pure state. There's always something modifying the mind, and it is going in a cycle of happy, sad, right? You see the cake, you feel happy. You see the dog suffering, you feel sad. You see, again, someone gives you a compliment, you feel happy. Again, you see some beggars on the street, you feel sad. You're going happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad. And this is not permanent happiness. This is not bliss. Because even if you're happy for some time, again, sadness will come. This is the nature of life. This is the nature of how you feel when you are identified with the mind, essentially. So this is what Patanjali is saying, that we have so many modifications. Now, this is a very simple example. Let me give you another example that is a bit more relevant to today's world, okay? So let's say that you've set yourself a goal that I want to earn 70,000 pounds or dollars every year, and you have calculated that this amount is enough for me. Okay, it will allow me to do everything I want to do. I can buy the car I want, I can go on the holidays I want. I don't need anything more than that. Okay, and with some grace and with some luck and hard work, you've reached there. You are now earning 70,000 pounds per year, and all of a sudden you go to eat with some of your friends, and one of your friends tells you that he just got a promotion, he's earning 150,000 pounds per year. And now all of a sudden, deep down, don't lie to yourself, deep down there's this jealousy that comes, that what, I want that, why does he have it, and I want this, essentially, right? And now, instead of being your initial goal, right, the ultimate for you was that 70,000 pounds a year, but now he's earning 150, and now you secretly want that 150. You are not content because you see that he can buy a better car, he can go on, maybe stay in better hotels, whatever it may be. So we've worked so hard for a few years to come to this point, and instead of feeling happy, again, the suffering kicks in because now we want more. And even if you were to get to that 150, it would not stop there. You know this, deep down you know this, it would not stop there, right? The millionaire is looking at the person who has 10 million, who's looking at the person who has 100, who is looking at the billionaire, right? It is never enough. And it's never enough. Do you know why? It's not because we're bad people. It's not because of that. It is because of the nature of the mind. The vritti that Patanjali is talking about, one vritti gives rise to many others. And our ignorance lies in the fact that we think that if we satisfy the desire of this vritti, then we will be happy. That is our mistake. That is our error of judgment. We think that by satisfying the desire, we will become happy. So we think that by getting the 70,000 pounds, then I will become happy. What we don't understand is that one vritti gives rise to many others. So when you are at the 70,000 pounds, now the desires have increased instead of stopped. Now you want 150,000 pounds. Now you want to stay in a better hotel, better house, get a better car, all these things. Send your kids to a better school, all these things, right? So, by the way, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with all of this. Of course not. What we are talking about is our suffering. This is why we see so many examples time and time again. People at the top of their career, people at the top of their career are committing suicide because they are not happy, they're depressed within. Okay, so this is the point. So Patanjali is saying that the whole point of yoga is to stop the modifications of the mind. This is a science, because we think that satisfying the vritti will satisfy us, but the vritti leads to many more modifications. So the the arising of the vritti, the arising of the modification, takes away the peace that our mind so craves. Do you understand? The arising of the modification, it is not that you are suffering because you don't have 70,000 pounds. You are suffering because the modification has arisen that you want 70,000 pounds. Initially, the mind was peaceful. When you don't know what people are doing, when you're not scrolling social media and not seeing what other people are doing, you are happy. It's only when you see that and things are thrown in your face that you suffer. Okay, so it's very important to understand this. Now, this is the cause of suffering. So, obviously, the first cause of suffering from Samkhya philosophy we saw is that we are ignorant of our true nature, right? So we are the Purusha, the pure consciousness. If you haven't watched yesterday's video, then please go and watch that. So we are the pure consciousness, but we are ignorant of this. We don't know this, right? So we identify with the body, we identify with the mind, and because we identify with the mind, we identify with the modifications of the mind, and this is the problem essentially. So now Patanjali in the third sutra is saying tada draste svarupe avasthanam, which means at that time when the modification of the mind is stopped, then the perceiver, i.e. you and me, rests in his own true nature. So when we stop the modifications of the mind, when the lake becomes completely still, you rest in your own true nature, and your own true nature is bliss. This is also given in the scriptures. Okay? Your own true nature is bliss. It is permanent happiness. So I hope this makes sense. I'm sure most of it makes sense so far. So the question now is how? How do we do this? How do we stop the modifications of the mind? So this, Patanjali has given us an exact step-by-step process. You may have heard of it. It is called the 8 limbs of yoga. So what Patanjali is saying is that if you follow this path, it is guaranteed that you will attain the goal that you seek, the peace that you seek, the liberation that you seek. Okay? So we are not covering that in today's video. I will probably do another video on it later. My channel has many videos related to the 8 limbs, but in the course that I will be running live, this will be covered in depth, right? In depth. The theory, the practice, the different practices, everything, essentially. So, all in all, this is a bit of the essence of the yoga philosophy. In no way is this an all-encompassing video. This is just the very start, but I hope this gives you some insight into the yoga philosophy, into the mind, and the fact that you can actually attain that pure peace, permanent peace and liberation simply by following the path of yoga. Okay, so that is it. Thank you very much for listening. Namaste.